lots of cool stuff happening today. I'll tell you what. I floated the word CASUISTRY a few, it's funny to call them episodes back. And that word has been lingering in my headspace now for a couple weeks. And it's a thing of beauty, man. Because I'm seeing some really interesting things happening in my life. And maybe it's because of this, thing that's happening with us. So if you don't know, I'm Emil. I'm a 40-something-year-old school administrator, does a couple other things on the side, including teach at a university and work in cybersecurity, and I'm married to this amazing lady, Olga, and she just a couple months ago got diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, otherwise known as ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a devastating disease. She's been given 2 to 3 years by her doctor. And of course, we're hoping otherwise. We're working hard to see what we can do to get her some really promising treatment that's currently stuck in the testing phase with the feds for good reason, but at the same time, it's a poorly designed study, in my opinion, based on ill-conceived frameworks for how to approach this kind of stuff. For diseases that have very low incidence, very low prominence, as far as they don't stick around for very long, right? So the average lifespan for a person with ALS is 2 to 5 years, and it's really more like 2 to 3 years. There are subgroups that sometimes do go 4, 5, 6, 8 years, 16 years. Steve Hawking went some 5 decades, but it presents differently in everybody. So, my wife could live another 8 years, but my neighbor who might have ALS might, move on in 6 weeks, because sometimes it can wrap you around its finger that fast. So anyway, so we are trying to raise funds because we have to reconfigure the house for a wheelchair and buy, van accessible mobility, a car, and we're planning on a trip to China, which is, hopefully going to work. We have a couple other things that we have in the hopper, and we're hoping those will work, but we're not talking about them because, we just want to make sure that everything gets done in the way it's supposed to be done. I'll just leave it at that. So if you can donate, please do so. Help me out, help my wife out. You're donating to an incredible cause. Anything will do. $5, $10. Your time alone, I'll put up another address on the screen if you don't have money to spend, but maybe you're willing to help us out with some online activism. I set up a couple of tweets for you. I set up a couple of emails to send out. You copy paste them into your system and push them out however you want, and it helps us. Activism has proven to be able to move the needle just a slight bit, and that's more. It's not what we were expecting. We're hoping to be able to move it further, but it does help. So if you're willing to give us your time, please sign up for Team Olga here on the screen. It will be helpful. It is now, what time is it? 2:23 in the morning, and Olga has gone to bed. And I've been thinking quite a bit about some of the weird stuff that's been happening in my life. So I thought I'd talk about it. No plan, so let's see how well this goes. Okay, so I don't have any tattoos, right? Step one, no tats. And it's not because I'm anti-tattoos or anything like that. It's just I've had a tattoo in mind that I've wanted to get, but I've been hesitant because of some of the connotations, that the symbology might be interpreted as having. So, I've shied away from it, but recently I declared that I'm gonna get a tat. And I think it's because of this life-changing experience. I don't know how else to commemorate it, but this has been by far the most impactful thing in my life. I guess after my marriage, in the first place, and I guess my birth. So birth first, marriage second, and then this thing has been the third most impactful thing, event or series of events that has been rocking my world, as of course has been shattering Olga's. So I just figured, this is the time to do it, and maybe it's not a good decision to make. I've been living with it for about 3 weeks now, and thinking about it, going back and forth. I know it's not a big deal, it's a tattoo for crying out loud, but there's something about the permanence of a tattoo, and I know it's not really permanent, but if you're gonna do it, right, commit to it, right? Go with the lore, go with the story, right? So I've committed to it. Let me tell you the backstory of the other tattoos. So the initial tattoo that I wanted to get was a tattoo of kind of like an Alice in Wonderland style mushroom with a snail on top of it, a stylized snail. And so the reason is that I grew up in Iran. Right, I wasn't born in America. I was born in Tehran, Iran, and my father is of Turkish descent, but he's of the Baha'i faith, and my mother is of Armenian descent, and she's of the Christian faith. And if you know much about the Turks and the Christians, you know that it's very Nazi Jew kind of a relationship there. And they fell in love. Perfect. There was the traditional, you'll never take my daughter, you'll never take my son, that kind of stuff that happened between the families. I think what ended up happening is, push came to shove. And I was born, and of course my parents were married, because they really, it was a passionate, wonderful relationship, and I keep trying to get more out of them about those first few encounters, because that's where the magic is, right? Those first few days, and it's also a cool way to talk to your parents, right? To kind of see them regress and be like little teenagers again, thinking about those days. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so they got together, and out came this fella here. So I spent much of my formative years in Eastern civilization, and we didn't have much access to what the rest of course, America and Europe may have had access to, so we didn't have like Romper Room or Sesame Street, things like, stuff that a lot of my friends grew up with. But we did have access to some of the, what would be considered Western entertainment. For example, Tintin, of the French culture. We had the comic books, and we even had access to some of the early movies, animation movies that were coming out of Tintin. Heckle and Jekyll, for example, we'd get those, and I think that was a Warner Brothers thing. We didn't have access to much of Disney, but we had access to three biggies. We had access to Pinocchio, we had access to Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which is really a beautiful piece of art. If you haven't seen Bedknobs and Broomsticks lately, see if you can pull that little sucker out, and it was really a truly amazing. Anyway, and then Alice in Wonderland, which is why the the motif of the mushroom, not for other reasons, which is why I'm hesitant to get it, but more because I'm a huge here Alice in Wonderland fanola here. Like, for example, un momento, por favor. You know, I have these littered all around my offices coming up. See if you can see that. You know, beautiful artwork, all sorts of Alice in Wonderland imagery, because it really, you know, influenced my way of thinking. The idea of going through a glass, you know, kind of seeing the world from a fantastical perspective, and it being just as real as the non-fantastical world that is referred to as reality. And I'd love to discuss that much further in the future, and I think I will. I think I'd like to maybe spend quite a bit of time, maybe meditate on that work. You know, the Alice. I'll just call it Alice. And the snail imagery was also. The snail imagery was actually even more so the reason why I wanted to get this tattoo than the mushroom. It just made sense because snails, mushies, they make sense, and my infatuation with the Alice in Wonderland story, and not just my infatuation, there's a lot of folks, but anyway. So here's the deal with the snail. So let me get back to my parents. So, you know, very Romeo and Juliet kind of a thing, you know, ne'er the two houses should meet, and but they did it anyway, opposed their parents, and, you know, love prevailed, and of course, you know, along with that came a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, but, you know, a beautiful, beautiful romance, a beautiful story that I hold in my heart, and I hope to share one day. Their romance was really a beautiful thing. So it came to pass that my parents got a tip. You know, that's the way it's been explained to me. I tried to get more out of it, but apparently they got a tip. Of course, everybody knew in the 70s what was happening in the late 1979, that the stuff was about to hit the fan in Iran, right? The Shah had just vominosed, or was in the process of vominosing again. It's like the second time he just, the king left, you know, and yet he's the king. Anyway, there were a lot of things that were happening in Iran, specifically around the clerics. What was happening at the time was there was this I'll call it urbanization, maybe modernization, for lack of a better term. I'm going back into the late 50s now, maybe in the 60s of Tehran, with this idea of you know, Iran should own its own oil, you know, that Mossadegh champion, the prime minister at the time. There was a kind of a rebirth of a more civil way of life, as opposed to a more religious way of life, which had been the way of the Persians all through what I call the Dark Ages, which would be kind of the 19th and 18th century of Iran's history. But so what was happening is the land of Iran was generally kind of bequeathed to these clerics. You know, that was kind of the tradition of the time. But because of this push back towards a more civil approach to wealth and equity and law and the such, the clerics were feeling like they weren't getting their just due. And so what happened is they kind of incited or had the potential, I should say, to incite kind of this riot atmosphere, this anti-Western atmosphere. Now they didn't do it. It took a man named Kermit to get it done, but that potential was there. There was angst between the clerics and what was considered to be the way of the Shah, the way of the regime, which was more towards a modernization, more like a let's continue with our scientific advance, because we're pretty amazing when it comes to engineering and when it comes to a whole bunch of different sciences, medicines, for example, but let's do it in the same way that the other industrialized nations are doing, like France, for example, like Germania or Almania or Germany, and of course the United States of America. And so the clerics then took that and kind of flipped it on itself and said, see, look at what the regime is trying to do. They're trying to get us away from our right of being Muslims, right? Because they were trying to associate being a religious Muslim to being a loyal person to Iran. So if God wasn't the thing that was guiding you before the civic government was, then you weren't a real Iranian. That was the sense that was being conveyed, or eventually was the sense that was being conveyed. And so anyway, a lot of that stuff led to some serious events that, of course, ended up in the hostage crisis, and then ended up in the Islamic Revolution, and ended up the Shah going to Paris or something like that, and then dying of cancer there, and the Khomeini coming in, the cleric, the religious, literally the religious right took over. The story of Khomeini is fantastic too. And what's interesting about it is that most of my friends who are Iranian don't really understand who Khomeini was, what happened. I swear, it's the weirdest thing. It's not weird, I say that. Let me say that with respect. It's not weird. It's just that, he was like Hitler would be to true Germans, people who were Bavarians, kind of like down-home Germans before anything else. And so my presumption is that at least my generation, the people that are somewhere around my age, 10, 15 years, or give and take up and down, I think we just associate Khomeini with the reason why we're in diaspora, right? It's him that, you did this to me, right? And so maybe that's why, almost en masse, I ask him, what do you know about Khomeini? Very little. One of the characteristics that they say was he didn't say much, but in fact he actually said a lot. Khomeini was like Rush Limbaugh in Iran, but he was in exile in France because of his silliness, his downright extreme viewpoints. He was exiled, but he was able to send tapes. Literally, he recorded like Rush Limbaugh shows on tapes, cassettes, and would get them back to Iran, and he would have his minions playing them over loudspeakers. I am not kidding you, y'all. Khomeini took over Iran based on some recordings that he made on little cassettes. Ask me about it. I'll tell you. Ask me about it. The stories are amazing. Anyway, and they're true, folks. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Okay, getting back to my story. My story is now about the revolution. So my parents, I'm 8 years old. My younger brother is 4. He's younger, obviously. My younger brother. And in the middle of the night, my mom wakes me up and says, "Hey, we're going where? You're going to meet him. Because you're meeting him." Well, we're going on vacation. I'm down, right? Vacation. Oh yeah, beats going to school, right? I mean, I kind of liked school, if I remember correctly. I don't remember much from that time. I was very young, but I remember having a good school experience when I was in Iran. I went to a couple of schools. I went to a place called Guildenstern, and then I went to another school called Alik, I want to say. Yeah, anyway. okay, vacay, let's go. And my brother, he's up and, we got him, we're walking, we're at the airport. This is weird because, we hadn't gone, I'd never been to an airport before at that time, but down with it, awesome, this looked cool. And then I'm sleeping again, and the next thing I know, we are in Hollywood, right, on vacation. And I don't know what Hollywood is, right, but I see my uncle because my mom's brother, he had come earlier. He was renting a house right in the middle of Hollywood, Alexandria and Sunset. There's a Kaiser there now, but that was my neighborhood. So anyway, oh my God, it's a hurricane, stresses, novice, right? Okay, so Huggins and we get into the car, and I remember my next memory from that experience was, whoa, these freeways are huge. Of course we have freeways in Iran, or they have freeways in Iran, but for some reason, the American freeways seemed gigantic. And I remember my uncle making some sort of a comment about how the traffic is amazing. But I can't remember if it meant a good way or a bad way. Anyway, so it starts to rain a little bit, right? Which was kind of cool. And because, I'm a desert creature, right? I mean, it's not that it doesn't rain in Tehran, but it doesn't rain in Tehran very much. So anyway, it was cool that it was starting to rain a little bit, and it rains plenty in Tehran. Just don't want to make it seem like, we're in the middle of the Sahara or something. So we get to the house, and we get our bags, we're coming out of the car, and we're walking inside, and what ended up happening is, as I came inside the perimeter fence, the little small fence with a little latch, I stepped on a snail and crushed it, right? Raining, snails are out. And dropped everything and just started bawling, just like I'm told, potentially with a level of psychosis, whatever that means. Oh, when I got up, did you see my? Oh, okay, I'll have to blurt that out then. Okay. All right. So why am I crying about this snail? I mean, not that I'm some tough guy, but that's not the kind of thing that would make me, an 8-year-old Emil, start to cry, And so many, many years later, after lots of introspection, reflection, conversations and such, I came to realize that particular cathartic experience was associated with my, it's highfalutin stuff, not that highfalutin, but kind of like an unconscious awareness that I had been whisked away from an entire civilization, right? Not I'm going from mommy's house to daddy's house. I'm going from basically one planet to another planet, right? And not really quite intellectually, perhaps, sifting through all that stuff, but emotionally, from a standpoint of, wait, what about my friends? Because I had great friends, Armand, Artine, Patty Saw. Maybe someday I'll talk about Patty Saw. Pardon me. So, yeah, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to anybody. Oh, woe is me. Oh, poor baby. But, to a child, to that nervous system, that's a pretty big deal, that it's gone. Those are gone. And not only is that part of life gone, but now maybe there's a part of my unconscious that was also predicting what's to come. Because remember, we don't speak English. We just arrived. I don't know anything. And so I had to get enrolled in school. And my parents had been told that math instruction in America blows, right? So they figured, that they would one-up me or give me a boost by somehow getting the registrar of Ramona Elementary to register me as a year older than I actually was. There's a whole story about birthday too, but That's an epic saga unto itself. So we'll leave that for another time. But so what ended up happening is I was enrolled towards, I want to say, the middle of third grade, thereabouts. And then when fourth grade came, I skipped it. They just pushed me from middle of third up to fifth because of the age thing. And the idea was, hey, maybe, my son will be able to get a better education if he just is hanging out with kids that are a bit older than he is. Kind of worked. Kind of worked, to be honest with you, but they also had some unintended consequences. That's where that tattoo comes from. The snail in the mushroom, right? But I never got it. So now I'm going through this, this third cavalcade of tragedy. And it's not only deepening my life, it's broadening my understanding of what it means to love, what it means to care for, what it means to give. Also, really, I appreciate what I have too. So anyway, it's a big time in my life. My God, I started a vlog. So I figured this would be it. So I declared again to my friends on Facebook, all my buddies, that I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. And so here's the new design, right? And it's the symbol of what's called the Kali Linux distribution. So Linux is a operating system for networks, devices, and stuff like that, where you can, where a lot of white hat hackers, like myself, can design different kinds of campaigns to test the vulnerability of different organizations, right? And of course, you can use a whole bunch of different operating systems. It just seems to be that Kali Linux, because the distribution comes with a series of, I'll call them prepared attacks. Attack's not the right word. It's primed for a hacker, this operating system. But I don't necessarily view hacking as a computer thing. I view hacking as a philosophy. I don't even like to call it hacking because it has a negative connotation. I've heard it referred to more interestingly as tinkering, because that's really all I do. I'm not some high level coder or anything like that. I'm just I know enough to do my job. So, but because I don't view it as just something that's about getting into computers, I think about it as hacking the universe. Ooh, hacking the universe, hacking the mind, hacking systems, hacking emotions, hacking love. It's probably an already taken URL. Hacking love. Hacking love. No. So, and I work in cybersecurity. I work in IT, or used to work in IT, I should say. The symbol of the dragon is also pretty pervasive in my lifetime. I did a one-person show back in 1999, I want to say, or maybe 2000, where I played a person who was having I'll call it a psychotic break with a secondary self, kind of like his childhood imaginary friend had grown up with him and went away, and now has appeared again, and the two of them are in a battle with this imaginary dragon. And so I've always viewed the dragon concept as the mystery of life is what it represents, the power and mystery, the majesty of life. Hash it, tag it, ring it. bring it. All right. So there's that vector, and then there's the concept of the Kali, right? And I don't know if you know about Kali, but Kali was the wife of Vishnu, and Vishnu is the great god of the Hindu religion. But if you know Hindu mythology, you know that Kali actually cuts off Vishnu's head and reminds him of who is really in charge. So Hindu mythology is very, very cool, interesting, and disturbing. For me, disturbing, not for everybody, obviously, and exciting too. I don't mean to poo-poo it. It's pretty cool. So 3 different vectors, right? My childhood fascination with the dragon concept, the idea of it being a representative of this operating system that I use to do my cybersecurity work, and then the idea of the hacking of the universe, or better the connection with Hindu mythology of what's you might think what's happening, right? You might think Vishnu, right? But here comes Kali. Probably need to formulate that thinking a little bit further, because to me it's just art, it's expression. I'm having to analyze. I'm not having to. I enjoy analyzing it, verbally. And there's this thing that maybe we'll rant on someday, called the crisis of language, right? That some things are extralingual. And then within that dragon symbol is the molecular diagram of a particular alkaloid that serves as a modulator in the brain. If you know me, you know that I've always been fascinated with neuropsychology and neurochemistry is probably better said. It's probably the better category, but at least that's what I thought it was, until more and more I realized that no, I'm really more interested in the psychology of it, not so much the chemistry of it, because that stuff is simple. Science is simple. That's the beauty of science. It's simple. I'm interested in stuff that goes beyond science, on and above science. Kind of a weird thing, but I showed the design to some friends of mine, and they said, yeah, that's pretty chill, that's pretty cool, go for it, it looks nice. I just haven't pulled the trigger. Again, I think maybe it's because of this permanence thing, but I'm really good with commitment. I'm really good with permanence. It's not that I crave it, but I don't think I've ever had any issues with that stuff, so I don't know why I never do it. My brother's got some awesome tats on his back. It's my dad's birthday coming up this weekend, and so we're going to go up and hang with the homie. And I didn't know what to get the guy, right? What am I going to get? So I thought I'd crowdsource it. So I put it up on Facebook. Hey, what should I get for Pops? And my people started coming up with some really cool ideas, man. Great ideas. Fun ideas, too, And I might actually do several of them. But one of them, by my dear friend Aaron. Hi, Aaron. We knew each other back in junior college. And then we just happened to now live in San Diego County together. Not a couple cities apart. It's pretty awesome. Anyway, tattoo, she goes, get him a tat. And I told, because in my post I said, hey, he's down with eagles. So she goes, how about a tat of an eagle? And then I go, I've been thinking about tats. And they go, oh, that'd be awesome. Both of us can get tats at the same time. So today I took my dear wife to a doctor's appointment. We had a doctor's appointment up in Los Angeles. And, we had a really shocking experience the last time we were up at this hospital at Cedar Sinai up in the Beverly Hills area. And so anyway, Anyway, this lady who was a great help, her name was Carolyn. She helped us a lot in the first appointment, so we really, kind of appreciated her because she was very helpful for us. And so we come back and we see her, and it's, oh my God, Carolyn, you were so kind. Oh, hey, it's like family all of a sudden. Obviously not. And so she turns around and she's walking in front of me, and wouldn't you know it, but on her and her, I'll call them her haunches. I don't think those are the real thing. I think haunches are like the feet, right? Let's bing it. What's a haunch? And is it inappropriate for me to say a human being has them? You tell me in the comments, will you? All right, so, and what are the tats? They're molecular diagrams of other alkaloids and other, like serotonin, epinephrine, and CASUISTRY, right? What? Now, first of all, how much of a geek do you have to be? This much to get molecular diagrams tatted on your body. For there to be two of us, and we're in the same building, in the same, we have, what? No, nothing, right? Coincidence? Completely? I'm reading into it? I'm delusional? Yeah, all right, yeah, I am. It's just fun to think about this stuff, but wait. Other crazy stuff happened all today. Okay, so, same day, right? Same day. This friend just sends me, without context, this link to this overview of this video of a place called Guildenstern, which is so it's a little village. It's kind of like there's a rock outcropping in the northwest part of Iran, in a province called Azerbaijan, which is like a state, if you will. It's a state. They call them provinces, but it's a state basically. Minor government runs the place, and what's interesting about this, it's a tourist attraction basically of this old village. I want to say maybe 500-600 years old, or maybe 700 years old, or something like that. But what's interesting about it is that the homes are built into the rocks, right? And so it's not crazy. It's not, because you can see that all over Europe. You can see that all over the planet, frankly. But it's just a beautiful thing. And what's interesting is that it all looks like a kind of like a hive, right? And then you have the honeycomb, like little cells, where people actually live. It's really beautiful stuff. And again, I don't know why I got this message, right? But it stopped me as soon as I saw it. I go, what the hell? What? Because, and there's no way my friend would have known this. I don't think. There's no way. No, there is no way. My grandparents were from a place in that area, about an hour away from there. It's called Tabriz, or a little village called Stoppard. And we lived in Tehran, which is about a day's drive, but we would go there a lot and spend weeks on weeks there in Stoppard and Tabriz. And of course, where do you think my parents would take us every now and again but to this little outcropping, this Guildenstern? And I remember it's been something that's been recurring in my life, because it was a memory that I had of that place that came back up when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, whether or not I was going to, move into, art for a living, or I was contemplating, anthropology, some of the soft sciences. So when I was exploring anthropology, I came across some really interesting things about a place called Çatalhöyük in ancient Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, which is like a beehive-like village that no streets in this village, because everybody, all of the homes were interconnected to one another. And it dates back, you're not gonna believe this, folks, 10,000 years. It is beyond old. And there's artwork all in that same region of men that are humanoids, I should say, that are basically giant bees. And they have mushrooms growing out of them. Beautiful imagery, dating back, many millennia, and with no explanation, obviously. How could there possibly be an explanation? When I came across that work, as I was exploring that particular field, it brought Candovan back into my headspace, and I couldn't place it particularly. I couldn't remember, why do I have this sense of knowing this place? And so I was talking to my mother about it, and my mother reminded me that when we were children, they would take us to Candovan. And not all the time. We weren't like dancing at Candovan raves, picnic at Candovan. But it was a thing, and then the pictures started to flash back into my head again, and then I started making connections to see if there would be any reason to see if there was some sort of a migratory thing that may have happened, some diffusion between the cultures, which was completely nuts because, again, 10,000 years, 500-600 years, or 600-700 years, I can't remember. Anyway, it came back up into my life again. And remember, we're not talking about like huge tourist attraction here, right? It's not like the Champs-Élysées, or it's not the Statue of Liberty. It's like a little village, just cute. It's cool looking, the cool doors, and it's all dirt everywhere. I'm sure. I don't know. I'm sure it's been all tricked out. T-shirts, buy your Candovan t-shirts. And then for some reason, I get a message, about this video. And it's a really cool video. And, why is not the right question. What is the question? And maybe there is no question. Because what do you say to that? What do you say when two highly unlikely events occur back to back in one day? Okay, let's take it easy, Emil. Take it easy, buddy. Tell us about your mother. Okay, let's take the therapist point of view and say, okay, I'm in a heightened state of mind right now because of these events that we're undergoing. True that, I'll buy that. Not sleeping well, and certainly not eating well. Not eating poorly, just not eating very much, which I guess is a good thing. But for two highly unlikely things to occur back to back like that, and for me to not take notice of it, I think is foolish. So what all of this stuff got me thinking about later in the evening is I was unwinding with an episode of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which, by the way, is a really great TV show. Olga and I are watching it, but it's getting weirder. Now I think we're in the end of the second season, and whoa, it suddenly took a wacko left turn. I don't know how long we'll last with it, but gosh, man, Rachel Bloom, oh, what a talent. What an amazing, amazing performer. And then that whole cast, too. Even the minor bits are incredible. Anyway, yeah, while we were unwinding, and like I said, the episode started to really get strange. Turns out she's an arsonist. It's just, but she did it for love. That was her lawyer's defense. Yeah, you know, it's hard to come up with material after a while. I'm sure of it. I started contemplating, just thinking about other stuff, you know, in relation to why did Carolyn have those 2 tats of molecular diagrams while I'm, you know, in throes of determining whether or not I should get my own tattoo of some molecular diagram. That again both have to do with neuroscience, right? I mean, you know, mine is again a particular alkaloid, and hers were these, you know, serotonin and anyway, the neurotransmitters, you know, the brain stuff, you know. We went to a neuroscience place, but so I guess yes, the likelihood of that happening increases quite a bit if you're going to put yourself in a neuroscience institute. Yes, you know. See what's happening? The story is seeping out, or is it? Is it just that it's solidifying? You know, why did suddenly I get this message from this dear friend? Again, out of context, you know, and it's not as if the two of us sit around and think of old days of Iran. You know, I mean, we didn't know each other actually, we didn't know each other in Iran. But suddenly this video popped across, and I haven't even asked him why he sent it. You know, because I kind of want to live in the mystery of it. It's really interesting, you know. There is no way he would have known. No way. So, all of this is bringing me to, you know, obviously second guess myself about, you know, what is real now as far as, you know, relationships. You know, can anybody ever really know somebody, bro? And what that thought led me to, as I was trying to get to, was a reflection on a play that I was in. Again, a couple decades ago, when I was doing the acting thing, called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Let me tell you about it. And you'll see how it connects to all of this CASUISTRY stuff that I've been talking about and then experiencing today. It is a play by a genius named Tom Stoppard. It's probably his most well-known piece because they turned it into a movie, starring Gary Oldman, actually. If you haven't seen it, it's really cool. It's funny. It's a little heavy. It's not a rom-com. It's nothing standard. You know, be prepared to think or listen to the exchanges a couple times, more than you might need to in some other movies, because, you know, it's heavy language. It's heavy language stuff. And Tom Stoppard is known for his ability to weave in scientific philosophies into his plays. And in the case of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, he explores probability, or, you know, what I think would be better referred to as casuistry, right? Because that's really what he's exploring, not the actual numerical, not the statistical aspect of it, more of the philosophical aspect, or the nature of why it is that probability even exists. You know, so for example, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, name of these two characters these characters exist in the play Hamlet, right? And so what Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is a play about these two, like, why do they exist? What's their backstory? Where do they come from? So in the play Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are his old chums, Hamlet's old buddies, right? And they have been summoned by Claudius, the king, evil King Claudius, to basically say, come here, go console Hamlet because he's off his rocker, obviously, and because he says he's talking to his dad, who is dead. And by the way, while you're at it, figure out, is this a ploy? Is he trying to do something to overthrow me or something like that? So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern don't have a choice, right? So of course they come in and they try to befriend Hamlet, and things end up happening where they're later on in the play they travel in. This doesn't actually occur in the play, but it's discussed in the play, wherein what happens is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have this letter that they're given by somebody, and they deliver it. It's kind of like a decree that they carry with them, so that when they get to their destination on this voyage that they're going on, that decree is basically what's going to occur. And apparently what the decree is that, hey, kill Hamlet when we get there. But Hamlet figures it out, switches it out, and ends up basically, they end up killing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Anyway, so what's fascinating about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead is that's a line from Hamlet where we hear, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. So what this play is, Tom Stoppard's play is it's what happens when they have the scenes with Hamlet, and then when we're watching Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern exit, right? And we'll stay with Hamlet, right? New in this one now, so a little scene from Hamlet starts up, and then Hamlet exits, and the two side characters stick around, and we learn about the side characters, and basically that's what the whole play is about. It's about why they've been summoned there. They don't even understand what's going on. They can't figure out their reality. So the play starts with the two of them finding themselves on a road, much like Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, right? The Vladimir and Estragon. Estragon? Yeah, Estragon. Anyway, and one of them is flipping the coin, and it comes up heads. Okay, tries it again. Heads, like always. And then they get into a conversation about it. So one of them is kind of like the Laurel to the Hardy, the Abbot to the Costello, kind of. Depends on how you play it, I suppose. I wasn't Rosencrantz or Guildenstern. No. I played the player. Probably the first time in my life where I kind of said, this acting thing could be fun. Because Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead is a deeply philosophical piece, and I suppose when I was dealing with that text and working with the director and working with these cool actors, man, Sean and Patrick, God bless them. I don't know where Patrick is. I'm still connected to Sean. I think I am, at least. So, it really made me feel like, wow, this is art in this form can really be powerful when the text is real and deals with, grappling with realities, grappling with, our understanding of one another. We create our universes. We create what we think the other person is thinking. In our headspace, so much stuff happens in the headspace that is not visible. That's just happening behind our eyes. And I was thinking that this idea of performance art, this visual art, right, where it's not just about voice, but it's also about visuals, lighting, and imagery, and performance, and sound. Basically a rock opera. Is potentially the greatest thing that we can do as human beings, is to manifest our minds into these, highly engaging, fun experiences that involve dance and emotion and what's this? This is dance? Yes. Anyway, so the conversation becomes about these weird interconnections, right? They say, well, why should we, for example, be surprised if we flip a coin 100 times and it comes up 100 times heads? Why is that surprising? If the chances of it becoming heads or tails every single time is 50-50, then why is it such a big deal? Why are we expecting it to be 50% of the time heads, 50% of the time tails? Would it be weird if it was 55% heads, 45% tails? Okay, you could probably live with that, right? Well, what about 60-40? At what is there a breaking point? It's a really interesting kickoff to the show where they're exploring that, and then Hamlet comes barging in. Oh, my friends, how are you? Boom, right? They're having this conversation, and this might not be exactly what occurs, but this is the kind of thing that occurred. This was a long time ago, folks. In the 60s, did a number on me. So, but in essence, what would happen is Hamlet, and suddenly the scene from the play Hamlet would swoop in, right? And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are now the bit players in the play that they are in, right? And they're participating, and Hamlet comes in and says, hey, you must do this, you must do that. And they're like, okay, we'll see you there, and we'll do it, sure. And then Hamlet takes off. We'll see you later on tonight at the party, yo, right? And then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are like, what just happened? Why are we going to go see him? They start talking about now the rationale, and then they start making connections to something else that occurred earlier in the day where, for example, they met moi, the player. As they're traveling to see Hamlet, they come across this troupe of artists led by a master of ceremonies, called the player, right? And he comes and he puts on shows, of course, for a price, and really what he's doing is he's kind of like the not the trickster character, but kind of like the person that has seen the horror of it all and is now really excited about not having to think about it anymore because he's fine with the reality of the universe as it is, and he loves to live in the mystery, and that's part of what his work is to create these dramatic theatrical experiences for anybody with a ducat, which again is kind of like this ability to manifest the imagination. Anyway, we can get off on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I'd love to, actually. If anybody's interested in having it like an on air, that's it. But if anybody wants to have a chat, we can do kind of like a little interview specifically about Tom Stoppard. I'd love to talk about him more. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. If you're down with it, hit me up. Let me know why. Because I want you to know something about Rosencrantz before we engage one another. Anyway, so again, God knows why these things are happening. Why is that happening? Why is that occurring? Olga and I had, kind of to wrap this up and bring it to a close, we've had this conversation multiple times in the past, but now it's taken on a more interesting thing. Again, going along with this idea of how it is that things come across one another, and that there is some sort of a grand plan, and that probably the best way to ride it is to surrender to it. But the conversation that Olga and I have around this stuff goes as follows. She was born in an industrial town in, I'd say, central Russia, where there were a lot of immigrants from the Tatars coming in that allowed her to meet her ex-husband and build a life with one another that was not satisfying enough to say happy, but it's a living. It's a living, which then caused consternation and problems between the two of them, which caused Olga to encourage her ex to apply for the visa lottery to America, for the both of them, of course, which he eventually got drawn, which then brought the two of them to America, which caused even more problems between the two of them. And then enter Emil. He's gonzo now. Whoa, look at this. Look at what I'm doing. It's late in the morning. So that I can marry her and then move her up to Fresno and then back down to San Diego and then eventually up to Oceanside, where we are right between two huge medical centers, two of which happen to be administering the phase 3 neurone trial for ALS, right? So why am I telling you that? Because we're trying to see if we can draw some, not causation, but I'm going to call it causality. I know it's all words and stuff, but just to give it that sense of, is it possible that, yes, Olga was guided all her life, and the reason the two of us met specifically was for us to marry so we can be in a position where when the ALS does start, right, because it's been in her, if it's genetic, then it's been in her body, potentially forever. So that when the disease does kick into place, we're at the right place at the right time to be able to take advantage of the latest technology as quick as possible, which is another trip, by the way. There are so many people that I'm finding out have ALS. Like, there's a couple of Facebook groups I'm a part of, and one of them, it's just like tips for caregivers and patients, and new people come in all the time, and I'm starting to freak out. I'm like, these people haven't even heard of neurone. I mentioned it to them, and they're like, "What? Please tell me more. What's neurone?" I'm like, dude, you must be going nuts if you don't even know that there's a possibility that you're going to survive this thing. Hit me up if you want to talk Rosencrantz and R and G. Now I'll leave you with this.
Where we went wrong was getting on a boat.
They had it in for us, didn't they? Right from the beginning. Who'd have thought we were so important?
But why? Was it all for this? Who are we that so much should converge on our little deaths?
You are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. That is enough.
No, it's not enough. To be told so little to such an end and still finally to be denied an explanation.
In our experience, almost everything ends in death.
Your experience? Actors. I'm talking about death. You've never experienced that. You die 1,000 casual deaths and come back in a different hat. But nobody gets up after death. There's no applause. Only silence and some second-hand clothes. Oh, that's death! If we have a destiny, then so had he. And if this is ours, then that was his. And if there are no explanations for us, then let there be none for him.
Oh, come, gentlemen. No flattery. It is merely competent. You see, it is the kind you do believe in. It's what is expected. Deaths for all ages and occasions. deaths of kings and princes and nobodies.
That's it then, is it? Done nothing wrong. Didn't harm anyone, did we?
I can't remember.
All right then. I don't care. I've had enough. To tell you the truth, I'm relieved.
There must have been a moment at the beginning where we could have said no. Somehow we missed it. Well, we'll know better next time.
Till then.
The sight is dismal. And our affairs from England come too late. The ears are senseless that should give us hearing. To tell him his commandment is fulfilled. That Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.